I had one of my strongest LSD breakthrough experiences on Ozora Festival 2026. And in this video I want to share the trip report of this absolutely insane journey. And what made this journey very special is it was the first time I took LSD through the nose. So hey, my name is Philip Vergo, and on this channel we talk about psychedelic actualization, working with psychedelics in a mature and responsible manner for your own self-actualization and self-realization. Interestingly enough, that doesn't exclude festival settings for me. Festival settings are a very interesting setting to consume substances in. Sometimes just for fun, but sometimes there can even be deeper stuff emerging at a festival setting. And that was the case with this experience as well, because it was quite surprisingly strong. So let me back up a little bit. I have had the idea to take LSD through the nose for quite a while. Many people actually do not know that it's possible to consume LSD through the nose, but it is, and it actually is one of the most effective ways, where you can just take the drop of LSD and you just drop it into your nostrils. And so that's what I did. I found my friend at Ozora. He gave me the LSD into the nostrils, one in each nostril. At least that's what he told me. So about 100 mics in each nostril, and it should have been a trip of about 200 mics. Yet it felt like 500 to 600 mics. It was incredibly fast and incredibly strong. And this is why this method of consumption is so interesting. Because the come up was happening over 15 minutes and I was in. It was incredibly fast. I barely made it back to my camp to go and pray. It was incredibly fast. Usually LSD takes about 45 to 60 minutes for me to really come on and enter into the space. But this one, I could feel it coming up. I could just, while walking to the camp, I could feel the anxiety coming up. When arriving at camp, before arriving at camp, everything started to melt down. Like, it was this intense process of reality completely dissolving. Everything was melting. My sense of self felt like it was dying, right? And I just had no other option but just to sit down and pray. I was happy that I made it back to camp, that I felt safe with people around me who could watch over me. Because if I would have been at the festival setting, maybe I would have panicked a little bit more. Maybe I would have, it would have went south, or I would have gone to psych care. But in the camp, I could surrender into the come up. And the only thing I could do was just get my prayer book and just pray. I learned this prayer in the Mahashakti temple of Skandervel in Wales recently, and I was just chanting it with all my being and all my heart and all my devotion. Om ekadandai vitmahi vakratundai dhimahi tanno tundi prachodayam gam ganapataye namaha, and so on and so forth for about 20 minutes, I would say. I could barely read or remember the sentences and the mantras because everything was dissolving in such an intensity. After that prayer, I was not done. It was intensifying to an even greater extent. I had to go into the forest, a little bit outside of the noise of other people around me. And I took the Japji Sahib, which is my other prayer that I'm praying currently, which is the starting prayer of the Sikhs. And this is also all about divine will, which will play a key part in this trip report. And so I was chanting the prayer, the Japji prayer, with all my heart, with all my being, and I couldn't even really make it to the end of the prayer. And towards the end of the prayer, I remember that language kind of like dissolved. Everything went into this full pinnacle of surrender, right? You might know this in some of your most intense experiences where it's just like everything is dissolving. You feel like you're dying and you just have to completely give yourself over to the experience. Even though it's scary, even though, everything is just dissolving into nothing. And at that moment of surrender, so interesting, a portal opened in the sky. And I was sucked into that portal in about half a second, like, and then from that moment on, from that moment of full surrender where I was teleported into this hole, I felt like I'm in. You know, I had the sense that, you know, it's over. The intensity, the moment of surrender, the dying, it's over, and I'm in. I'm in the space. I can think, I can move, I can do stuff. Because I had the fear or the expectation or kind of like the image that, oh, now I'm gonna just lay in camp for like the next 6 to 12 hours and just process this intense LSD journey, not being able to move around. But it just took like 20-30 minutes of praying to this point of immense intensity, and then I felt like I was in. And even though everything was still wavy and like, yeah, the only reference point I have is about 500 mics of LSD, or 600, which I've rarely gone to be honest, a couple of times. But everything was still wavy, but I could move. I could move in the world. And this is now where kind of like the trip begins, but also where my trip report here ends. Because the trip report itself, the things that I did were not too special. They were quite ordinary, quite fun, quite casual in a sense. But the way in which the whole evening and night unfolded was so interesting. And there's such a deep, valuable lesson here for me at least. And that is that in that moment of full surrender, I gave myself over fully to divine will, to God, to God's will. And I surrendered myself fully to the Tao, to the way of things, to the flow of things. So what it felt like is that I wasn't doing anything anymore. At least, especially kind of like for the first 4 to 6 hours of the trip. It felt like I had no will of my own, but I was just like moving. My body was just moving without a sense of I. It was just flowing with whatever is appearing in front of me. Just directly being clear and knowing 100% what my true desire is, where I am meant to be, and then just moving there and being there. And what happened through that was that there was such an increase of synchronicity. You know, at festivals it can happen even without the psychedelics, that there is an increased sense of synchronicity, but on psychedelics or even high dose, especially high dose psychedelic journeys, there is a very unique, special kind of synchronicity that can appear when you're moving at that kind of frequency at the festival. And it was so fascinating because from that point on, I met the people that I was meant to meet, and I had the interactions that were meant to happen that night. Quite interesting. Again, I can share a few details, you know, if you want to. They're not quite, you know, profound or special, but it was just, for me personally, they were quite meaningful, right? So I started out walking to the arts barn where we could watch the sunset, and I met my friend, and he was juggling. And so I was so profoundly high, but I just started to learn juggling. Understanding juggling for the first time was quite fun. I had the desire to play dragon. I was like, oh, I didn't take my dragon, which is this fire toy. And I saw a dragon. And this dragon just came to me because I asked for it. And I could play around with it for a little bit. So thank you for that, you know. And then I felt the desire to move on. Went to the place where my friend gave me the LSD. And at that moment, at the moment I arrived there, my friends were leaving. The group of friends that I was with there were leaving. And I was like, oh, perfect. I left with them to see Spongle live. First time seeing Spongle live. During this experience, also absolutely profoundly beautiful. Very nice. Very beautiful music, very psychedelic music. And in this high-dose LSD state, it felt like I was completely spongled. And it was beautiful. From there, I switched again to another friend group. Wanted to go somewhere else. The friend group came with me. I couldn't stay with the friend group because it was like too many people with too many desires and it was too slow for me, so I disappeared from the group. The moment I disappeared from the group, I met another friend and mentor of mine that I deeply appreciate, that I knew was going to be at Ozora, but that I haven't seen for the first 6 days. And at that moment, I met him. We spent some time. I met the person that accepted me to give a lecture and a talk at Ozora. Could give her a big thank you, which was very nice to meet her in person. just like incredible synchronicities, right? By following my true desire of what I wanted to do in the moment, reality was aligning itself with that intention by presenting whatever was perfectly, desired in that moment. Not expected. It was all a surprise, but perfectly aligned with what I truly wanted in that moment. Then moving from the main stage to the fruit stall, because I was hungry. I was like, I need some fruit. I was like moving with my friend there, met another person that then bounced off into a gong meditation, and this just kept happening. These synchronicities kept happening. They did not stop. They didn't stop at all, right? And towards the end, I was meeting my friend again, who gave me the LSD towards sunrise, and could talk with him a little bit, hang out, and then watching the sunrise at Ozora with a falafel was just the perfect ending to the trip. So all these little details, they do not sound profound, they do not sound too meaningful or too crazy. And I wasn't acting too crazy in a sense in that whole experience. I could just be me. I could move consciously and authentically without being completely out of my mind, even though I, in a sense, was completely out of my mind. And God, or the divine, or that energy, that consciousness, was just acting and moving through me without me doing anything, but everything was perfectly orchestrated. So that's the key lesson, is just that I take from this. Like, if you give yourself over to the divine fully, everything that you want is going to appear right in front of you, right? But you got to give up everything in order to obtain everything. You got to come to that place of full surrender, of the full giving yourself over to the divine, to come to the place of receiving everything that you want, of reality presenting everything perfectly. And so that's just quite interesting, right? It was a very beautiful journey, profound, just to see how one can operate in a festival setting at high-dose psychedelic journeys. It's something that I'm very careful about, and sometimes even warn against here on this channel, right? Being a responsible, mature human being, not just blasting off at a festival. But there is a very delicate art of high-dose journeying at festivals that is quite interesting. It has its risks, it has its dangers, but it does make the experience very... it gives it a different flavor than just being sober at a festival or just staying with low doses at a festival. Again, not for everybody. There's different kinds of people coming and going to festivals, right? But that was a profound, very interesting experience for me, especially at this Ozora Festival. And it was a first time of something, right? The first time of taking LSD through a different route of administration, through dropping the drops into the nostrils, which I can highly recommend. Maybe not in a recreational setting, just try it out by yourself with a facilitator, with a friend there, or alone by yourself, but it can be surprisingly fast and intense, especially the come up. It really took me by surprise. It really brought me to my knees and to the place of full surrender, to the place of fear and intensity, yet moving through that and entering into the space, it just emerged into the most perfectly orchestrated, beautiful journey that I've had this year at Ozora. So that was it. That was my Ozora trip report of my highlight of Ozora, which was probably this LSD experience. Share with me in the comments below, like, have you had high dose journeys at festivals? What was that experience like? Did you experience more of the dangers and the risks, or the beautiful and profoundly interesting sides of it? Let us know in the comments down below. And also, if you feel like you want support with integrating your psychedelic experiences, or even integrate your festival experiences, because a festival can be such an information overload and an overload of insights, then feel free to reach out to me. I do offer integration coaching, so you can hold and embody and realize those insights and live them in your day-to-day life. All right, wishing you much love. Hope you enjoyed that one, and I'll see you in the next one.